This movie's fucking weird. It's crazy to think that the Godzilla franchise is over 60 years old now, and not to mention it's still the longest running movie franchise of all time. So of course with a franchise that has been around since like the 1950s, it was bound to get a little strange at times. And by strange, I mean, what the fuck were they thinking? Godzilla vs. Hedorah is one of those movies you swear was only a fever dream you had as a kid. My earliest memory I can recall was probably when I rented it from Blockbuster around, I want to say 2004 to 2006-ish. Yes, I'm old. I was just a young sailor, obsessed with giant monster movies and Pikmin 2 on the GameCube. My ultimate goal was to watch every Godzilla movie I could, and that was not an easy task. As every film wasn't easily accessible back then as it is now, I either had to just steal that shit from Blockbuster, Hollywood Video, or try to find a copy off eBay. And lo and behold, one of the first ones I was able to get my hands on was this acid trip put to film. So what makes this movie stand out compared to all the other Godzilla movies? I mean, most people have seen Godzilla's gravity-defying dropkick, him dance on an alien planet, or whatever the fuck this thing is. So I say, let's just start the movie and see what all the fuss is about. I mean, like when I was a kid, obviously I was able to handle it back then, so I don't see why. So our film begins with B-roll of humanity hotboxing the world, causing the creation of the titled monster Hedorah, or Hedorah as they call it in the movie, or Hedorah, whatever way you want to pronounce that. But yeah, he's just a giant smog monster created by the pollution mankind has poisoned the world with, which is honestly a cool concept when you think about it, as it's kind of like a different version of the Godzilla story, just in a different form, since Godzilla kind of represents, you know, nuclear energy, nuclear weapons, you know, the atomic bomb, the H-bomb, literally all of that. And Hedorah represents more of the gasoline, the greenhouse effect, and all this kind of like pollution aspect of it. So it's like, it's two monsters created by similar aspects of humanity fucking up the world. So I will give them props for that. I think that is really interesting in concept. And I guess it is pretty interesting in execution too. Although later on in the film, they confirm that he's an alien from some kind of like other space nebula. I mean, the whole Showa era of movies is just completely filled with that, but I still think it's pretty interesting. But yeah, Hedorah has traveled from deep space to Earth so we can feed off our pollution. First by killing the sea life and poisoning the waters, to eventually ripping a fucking cargo ship in half.
The creature possesses tremendous strength.
And after seeing this, what does this scientist husband and father do? He takes his kid to the beach, ditches him, and then goes scuba diving looking for the monster. Oh yeah, I forgot to explain that just happens. There's just random animated segments just like riddled throughout the entire film. Rewatching the entire movie, I didn't know if it was supposed to be like the newscast or whatever, kind of like demonstrating Hedorah's like effects on. Every time I ask a question, 3 more pop up in my head. And no, I didn't edit that in any way. That's literally how the film is cut. It just goes from that scene and immediately just cuts to Godzilla with a sunset in the background and some fucking jazz music playing in the background. Okay, now we're cutting back to the sea trash. And is this his fucking theme song? Imagine if this was the soundtrack they played during the original Godzilla movie. So Godzilla decides to solve this trash problem by lighting it on fire. But it was all a dream. Cause fuck it. Yeah, a lot of the Godzilla scenes in this movie are just dreams of the main kid's like perspective. Later on in the film, he goes on like a roller coaster and sees Godzilla for a brief second. This is literally never explained ever. Like, we don't know if it actually was Godzilla or if it was just like him kind of daydreaming or having like his imagination, because I mean, that's a big part of the Godzilla franchise. I mean, we'll get to this one later. So cut back to Hedorah, and he's making his way towards the city and manages to mutate further into some kind of like terrestrial landform. Meanwhile, this guy's tripping balls after drinking some Four Locos at a Tame Impala concert. You following? Good.
Save the earth, save the earth, save the earth.
So you might be thinking to yourself, how do they top that? How do they top everything that just listed off? How does it get crazier from there? Hedorah starts smoking a smokestack like it's a 100-foot bong. And then Godzilla interrupts him. Alright. Okay, this is the first fight scene. What do we got? How are we gonna start this out? Godzilla vs. Hedorah, round 1. There's no music this whole scene. It's just them flailing around and roaring. I'm not even kidding when I say that. Did I move the light? I'm not even kidding when I say that is most of the fight scenes in this entire movie. They just stand there. Like Hedorah will maybe move around every once in a while. Godzilla will just fight like he's like the Numa Numa guy, you know? I am old as fuck. The fight only really starts picking up when Godzilla starts to spin Hedorah around like Mario 64 style. This seems like a good idea because I mean Godzilla's winning. I mean he's just swinging Hedorah around. But the problem is it starts like throwing Hedorah's sludge everywhere and just murdering people. There's a scene where like the sludge just flies off Hedorah and making that little sound effect that's always in these old Godzilla movies, and it crashes through a window, and these people are just gambling and they just get fucking murdered out of nowhere. You know, if they took this movie in a more horror direction, I really think it had potential to be one of the best Godzilla movies ever. Like, honestly, up there with the first movie, because the first Godzilla movie has a lot of horror elements. Would I consider it a horror movie? Maybe not. It's more of like a science like fiction, just kind of with more horror aspects in it. But I really think if they would have taken this whole movie in that direction, it could have easily been one of the best Godzilla movies. I mean, look at this scene right here. This is where the lack of music works the best. You get this super uneasy feeling as the only sounds you hear are the people screaming, and then boom, silence. Like their screams are just cut off because they're instantly just killed by like the tiniest bit of contact with Hedorah's sludge, and then all you hear is his sludge moving around. Also animal abuse. So after more nothing, Hedorah retreats with Godzilla following suit. I love this shot of these two just sitting in the car watching the entire fight scene happen, because it's just like it switches from like Hedorah like roaring or screaming, Godzilla screaming and roaring, and then just these two in a car in the middle like. I don't even know why. Like, I feel like everyone in Japan, at least in this like universe, should just be used to this shit at this point. Another aspect I'll really commend the filmmakers for doing is making the human scenes actually like kind of tolerable. Because especially in the older Godzilla movies, they're fucking unbearable. Like it's like a dub version 2 with the kid actors screaming and everything. But actually, no, I think it's really interesting to see the humans discovering the weakness of the monsters, which is something that I really loved about Shin Godzilla, is that humanity is working together to try to like help stop the threat. You know, which isn't always Godzilla. Usually there's another monster that's a bigger threat at the end of the day, and they need Godzilla's help for it. But like the two are relying on each other heavily in this movie, and I think it's really interesting as like the more the film goes on, the more the scientist and his family really discover more about Hedorah, finding out his weakness, and then at the very end exploiting it to defeat him. Also, I want to point out that there's toys of Godzilla and Ghidorah in this universe. I just find it funny that they made merchandise of literal genocidal monsters. Alright, let's skip ahead a little bit. What the fuck is he doing? He literally has atomic breath that can just burn Hedorah. He's just flailing his arms around. Part 2.